The great hall of the Nexari Empire fell silent as Emperor Vexcar received the news of General Thaxmore's defeat. The massive ruler, standing 12 feet tall with skin like black stone, crushed the datapad in his enormous hand. "Defeated by insects," he growled, his voice shaking the metal walls. "Our greatest general, killed by creatures barely tall enough to reach his knee." His war council shifted nervously. These were the most feared warriors in the galaxy, but even they knew better than to anger their emperor when he was in this mood. "My lord," spoke War Master Gexmore, choosing his words carefully, "perhaps we should study these humans more closely. They seem to possess unusual abilities." "Unusual abilities?" Vexcar roared. "They are small and weak. Our defeat is an insult that cannot be tolerated." The Emperor turned to his communications master. "Send a message to the Galactic Council. Tell them that the humans attacked our ships without provocation. Demand that they be handed over for punishment. And if the Council refuses, ask Gexmore." "Then we declare war," Vexcar replied coldly. "The entire galaxy will learn what happens to those who defy the Nexari Empire." 3 days later, the Galactic Council received the Nexari ultimatum. The massive chamber buzzed with nervous conversation as the 12-member species debated their response. "This is madness," declared Ambassador Quickstall of the Kithrin Empire. "The humans were defending a civilian colony. They did nothing wrong." "The Nexari don't care about right and wrong," replied the Vorthan representative. "They care about their pride, and the humans have wounded it badly." The Geodian ambassador's stone-like form rumbled as he spoke. "If we refuse their demands, they will attack. Are we prepared for war?" "Our fleets are strong," said the Zephyrian ambassador. "We have kept peace for 3,000 years through strength and wisdom. But the Nexari have been building their forces for decades," warned the Kithrin. "Their empire spans 50 worlds. This will not be an easy war." The debate continued for hours. Finally, the council voted unanimously to refuse the Nexari demands. The humans had acted in defense of innocent civilians, and the council would not abandon them. The Nexari response was swift and brutal. Within 24 hours, their fleets attacked 5 council worlds simultaneously. The peaceful species of the galaxy found themselves thrust into the largest war in 3 millennia. On Earth, President Helen Carter stood before the United Earth Assembly, her face grave as she addressed the representatives of humanity. "The Nexari Empire has declared war on the Galactic Council," she announced. "They have demanded that we be handed over for punishment. The Council has refused, and now we face a choice." The assembly hall was completely silent. These men and women understood the weight of the moment. "We can withdraw from galactic affairs and hope the Nexari forget about us," Helen continued. "Or we can stand with our allies and fight for what we believe is right." Representative Mark Wilson from North America stood up. "Madam President, what are our chances if we fight?" "Honestly, not good," Helen replied. "The Nexari outnumber us hundreds to 1. Their ships are larger and more heavily armed. But if we run now, we'll always be running." Representative Sarah Lee from Asia spoke next. "What about our families? Our children? Is it right to risk everything for alien worlds we barely know?" Helen was quiet for a moment before answering. "The miners on Kepler 7 have families and children too. So do the civilians on the worlds the Nexari are attacking right now. If we only fight for ourselves, what kind of species are we?" The vote was unanimous. Humanity would stand with the Galactic Council, no matter the cost. General Rick Barnes was appointed Supreme Commander of Human Forces. At 6 feet tall, he was considered a giant by human standards, but he knew the aliens still saw him as tiny. His first task was to coordinate with the Council's military leaders. The meeting took place aboard the massive Kithrin battleship Crystal Star. General Barnes and his aide, Colonel Sarah White, walked through corridors designed for beings twice their size. When they reached the command center, Barnes had to crane his neck to look up at the alien commanders. "General Barnes," said Admiral Crixville of the Kithran Navy. "We are honored by humanity's decision to fight with us. However, I must ask, what can your small fleets contribute to this war?" Barnes studied the tactical displays showing Nexari advances across multiple star systems. "We can do what we do best, Admiral. Fight smart, fight fast, and fight dirty. When we have to. The Nexari are not like the patrol ships you defeated," warned General Dex 9 of the Vorthan Defense Force. "They have hundreds of warships and millions of soldiers. This will be total war. Then we'll show them what total war really means," Barnes replied grimly. The first major test came at the Altair system, where a combined human-alien fleet faced the Nexari Third Army. Barnes commanded the human contingent from his flagship Determination, while Admiral Crixville led the main council force. "Nexari fleet detected," reported Lieutenant Kelly Adams. From the sensor station, 300 ships moving in attack formation. Barnes studied the enemy fleet through the view screen. The Nexari ships looked like flying fortresses, bristling with weapons and armor. They advanced in perfect lines, confident in their superiority. "Admiral Crixville," Barnes called over the comm, "execute your attack plan. We'll provide support." "Understood, General." All council ships, advance and engage. The council fleet moved forward to meet the Nexari head-on. It was exactly what Barnes had expected. Traditional galactic warfare, ship against ship, strength against strength. The kind of battle the Nexari excelled at. "Wait for it," Barnes murmured, watching the two fleets close with each other. Battle erupted in brilliant flashes of energy as the massive ships exchanged fire. The council vessels were holding their own, but Barnes could see they were slowly being pushed back. The Nexari had more ships and better tactics for this kind. "A fight, now," Barnes ordered. "All human ships, execute Plan Wolfpack." The human fleet scattered, disappearing behind the larger council ships. The Nexari commanders probably thought they were retreating. They were wrong. "Target the Nexari supply ships," Barnes commanded. "Ignore the warships for now." The human vessels struck like lightning, appearing suddenly behind the Nexari lines. Instead of attacking the heavily armored warships, they went after the vulnerable support vessels, fuel tankers, ammunition ships, and repair vessels. "General," reported Colonel White from the tactical station, "Nexari command ship is trying to redirect forces to protect their supply lines." "Perfect," Barnes smiled. "That's exactly what we want them to do." As the Nexari pulled ships away from the main battle to protect their rear, the council fleet began to push forward. The human tactics were working, but Barnes knew the real test was yet to come. "Sir," called Lieutenant Adams, "the Nexari are launching boarding parties. They're trying to take our disabled ships." Barnes felt his blood run cold. The Nexari were known for their brutal treatment of prisoners. Any human crew that was captured would face a fate worse than death. "All human ships," he called over the comm, "prepare for boarding actions. Remember your training." What happened next shocked both the Council and Nexari forces. Instead of trying to avoid the boarding parties, the human ships deliberately moved closer to damage Nexari vessels. Human Marines, led by Sergeant Danny Clark, began boarding the enemy ships. The aliens on both sides watched in disbelief as humans voluntarily entered close combat with beings twice their size. But the humans had advantages the aliens didn't. Understand, they were faster, more flexible, and absolutely fearless when fighting for their friends. "Nexari's ship Thunderbringer has been captured," reported Colonel White, amazement in her voice. "Sergeant Clark's team has taken the bridge." Barnes nodded grimly. The galaxy was about to learn that humans didn't just fight ship to ship. They fought warrior to warrior, face to face, with a savagery that no civilized species had seen for millennia. The Battle of Altair raged for 6 hours. When it ended, the Nexari fleet was in full retreat, leaving behind dozens of destroyed ships and thousands of captured soldiers. The Council had won, but the victory came at a terrible cost. As Barnes walked through the medical bay afterward, Seeing both human and alien wounded being treated side by side, he knew this was just the beginning. The Nexari would be back with more ships and better tactics, but they would also be coming with fear in their hearts. For the first time in their history, they had faced an enemy that was not only willing to die, but willing to make death personal. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was the reason why. The news of humanity's victory over the Nexari patrol spread through the galaxy like wildfire. General Faxmore, Supreme Commander of the Nexari Third Fleet, stood in his command center staring at the battle reports. His massive frame trembled with rage as he read the details. 30 warriors defeated by 8 tiny humans, he growled, his voice echoing through the metal corridors. This is impossible. His aide, a younger Nexari named Vexco, stepped forward carefully. General, perhaps we underestimated them. The reports suggest they use tactics we have never seen before. Thaxmore's red eyes flared with anger. Tactics? They are the size of our children. How can such small beings defeat true warriors? The humans use coordinated attacks, Vexco explained, reading from his datapad. They moved in patterns that confuse our targeting systems. Their ships are much faster than ours. Then we will use more ships, Thaxmore declared. I will personally lead a fleet to crush these insects. The Empire's honor demands it. Meanwhile, at the Galactic Council Station, emergency sessions were being held. The 12-member species gathered in their great chamber, their voices filled with concern and confusion. This changes everything, said Ambassador Crickstall of the Kithran Empire. If the humans can defeat Nexari ships, perhaps we have been wrong about them. Or perhaps the Nexari are weaker than we thought, suggested the Vorten representative, his multiple arms gesturing as he spoke. Either way, this small victory will anger them greatly. The massive stone-like Giadian rumbled. In agreement. The Nexari do not accept defeat easily. They will seek revenge. Then we must be prepared, said the Serpentine Zephyrian ambassador. The humans may have won one battle, but can they win a war? Back at the human patrol base, Admiral Carl Stevens was reviewing the latest intelligence reports. The Nexari were mobilizing a massive fleet, 30 ships strong, all heading toward the human patrol area. They're coming in force this time, reported Captain Amy Foster, who had just returned from her successful mission. Our scouts count at least 30 vessels, including their flagship. 30 against 8, mused Colonel Ben Parker. Those aren't good odds. No, Carl agreed, but they're the odds we have. The Council can't send reinforcements for another week, and those miners on Kepler 7 can't wait that long. Amy studied the tactical display. We could withdraw. Live to fight another day. Carl shook his head. If we run now, we'll never get another chance to prove ourselves. The Council will lock us away for our own protection, and the Nexari will know they have nothing to fear from humans. So we fight, Ben said simply. We fight, Carl confirmed. But we fight smart. Amy, I want you to study every piece of data we have on Nexari tactics. Ben, prepare the ships for extended combat. We're going to show the galaxy what humans can really do. 3 days later, the human fleet took position at the edge of the Kepler system. 8 small ships against 30 massive Nexari warships. The odds were overwhelming, but the human crews were ready. Nexari fleet detected, reported Lieutenant Dan Clark from the sensor station. They're dropping out of hyperspace now. Amy watched as the enemy ships appeared on the main screen. They were arranged in a traditional battle formation, with the largest ship in the center. That would be General Faxmore's flagship. Incoming transmission, announced the communications officer. Put it through. The screen filled with the image of General Faxmore himself. He was even more imposing than the previous Nexari commander, with scars across his face and armor that gleamed like black metal. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. I am General Faxmore of the Nexari Empire. You will surrender immediately, or I will destroy every human ship in this system. Amy stood up, knowing she looked small compared to the alien general. This is Captain Amy Foster of the Galactic Council Defense Force. You are in violation of neutral space. Withdraw immediately. Daxmore laughed, a sound like thunder. You defeated a patrol of inexperienced warriors. Now you face the Third Fleet. I have conquered worlds and enslaved entire species. What can 8 tiny ships do against 30? You're about to find out, Amy replied. Cutting the transmission, the Nexari fleet immediately began to advance. There, massive ships moving in perfect formation. But Amy had expected this. The humans had studied Nexari tactics for months, and they knew exactly what to do. Execute Plan Delta, Amy ordered. The human ships scattered in all directions, moving so fast that the Nexari targeting systems couldn't lock on. Instead of fighting as a group, each human ship became an individual predator, hunting the larger vessels. Target their engines, Amy commanded. Disable them one by one. The battle began in earnest. The Nexari ships fired massive energy beams. That could destroy a human vessel in one hit, but they couldn't hit targets that moved like the human ships. Meanwhile, the humans concentrated their fire on specific systems, slowly wearing down their larger opponents. 2 Nexari ships are losing power, reported Dan Clark. Their engines are failing. Amy smiled grimly. The plan was working, but she knew the real test was yet to come. The Nexari were learning to adapt, and General Thaxmore was no fool. All ships, fall back to position Beta, Amy ordered. Prepare for Phase 2. The human ships regrouped near an asteroid field, using the rocks as cover. The Nexari followed, their formation becoming more scattered as they tried to pursue the faster human vessels. Now, Amy whispered. The human ships attacked from all sides at once, emerging from behind asteroids like sharks from dark water. The Nexari found themselves surrounded, their massive ships too slow to respond to the coordinated assault. Direct hit on the flagship, reported the tactical officer. Their shields are down to 60%. But the Nexari were far from finished. General Thaxmore began issuing new orders, and the alien ships started to form defensive circles, protecting each other's weak points. He's adapting. Ben's voice came over the comm. This guy knows how to fight. Then we adapt too, Amy replied. All ships, execute Plan Gamma. What happened next became legendary in galactic military history. The human ships began to fight, like a pack of wolves constantly moving and regrouping. When the Nexari tried to protect their flanks, the humans attacked from above and below. When they tried to maintain formation, the humans split them apart with surgical strikes. The battle raged for over an hour. The Nexari had superior firepower and armor, but the humans had something else, the ability to think and adapt faster than their enemies. Every time the Nexari developed a counter-strategy, the humans were already moving to their next tactic. The Nexari are starting to make mistakes, observed Dan Clark. They're frustrated. Amy could see it too. The alien ships were firing wildly, wasting energy and ammunition. Their formation was breaking down as individual captains tried to catch the elusive human vessels. Time for the final phase, Amy decided. All ships, prepare for ramming speed. Amy. Ben's voice carried a note of concern. Are you sure about this? Trust me, Amy replied. We're going to show them what humans do when we're backed into a corner. The human ship Defender, commanded by Captain Kate Johnson, had taken heavy damage. Her engines were failing, and her weapons were nearly depleted. But instead of retreating, she did something that shocked both sides. This is Kate Johnson. Her voice came over the comm. I'm going to ram the flagship. Tell my family I died fighting for something important. Kate, no. Amy shouted, but it was too late. The Defender accelerated toward the massive Nexari flagship, dodging the desperate fire from its defensive guns. The small human ship struck the alien vessel's engine core like a missile, and both ships disappeared in a brilliant explosion. The sacrifice stunned the Nexari fleet. In all their wars, they had never seen an enemy choose certain death for tactical advantage. The loss of their flagship sent shockwaves through their ranks. "All ships attack now," Amy ordered, her voice filled with fury and grief. The remaining human ships struck with renewed ferocity, their crews inspired by Kate's sacrifice. The Nexari, demoralized by the loss of their flagship and their general, began to retreat. "The Nexari are withdrawing," reported Dan Clark. "They're jumping to hyperspace." Amy watched as the enemy fleet disappeared, leaving only wreckage and debris. The humans had won, but the victory felt hollow. They had lost Kate Johnson and 2 other ships, along with 47 brave crew members. All ships returned to base. Amy ordered quietly, "We have a report to make." The news of the battle spread through the galaxy within hours. The Galactic Council was stunned. Their protected species had defeated a full Nexari fleet. The other alien species began to look at humans with new respect and, in some cases, fear. But it was the Nexari Empire's reaction that truly mattered. They had lost their most experienced general and their pride. The small humans had humiliated them in front of the entire galaxy. War was coming, and everyone knew it. The question was, could humanity survive what they had started? As Amy stood in her quarters, looking out at the stars, she thought about Kate Johnson's sacrifice. The captain had died to save others, and her actions had shown the galaxy something important about human nature. Humans might be small, but they were willing to die for what they believed in. That made them more dangerous than any weapon. 6 months had passed since humanity's first contact with the Galactic Council. Captain Amy Foster stood in the briefing room aboard the Earth Defense Station, watching the holographic display show the latest intelligence reports. The news was not good. "The Nexari Empire has taken 3 more neutral systems," reported Colonel Ben Parker, pointing to the red zones on the star map. "Their expansion is accelerating." Amy studied the data with growing concern. The Nexari were a warrior species, standing over 10 feet tall with thick armor-like skin and natural weapons. They had been testing the Galactic Council's resolve for months, pushing deeper into neutral space with each attack. "What's the Council's response?" Amy asked. "Same as always," Ben replied with disgust. "They're calling for diplomatic talks and economic sanctions. Meanwhile, the Nexari are enslaving entire worlds." Amy shook her head. During the past 6 months, humanity had learned much about galactic politics. The Council preferred to avoid conflict, relying on their size and reputation to maintain peace. But the Nexari didn't seem impressed by either. "There's something else," Ben continued. "The Nexari have been asking questions about us. They want to know about the tiny species that joined the Council." "Let them ask," Amy said. "We're not hiding." The door chimed, and Admiral Carl Stevens entered the room. At 55, he was one of Earth's most experienced military leaders, though his 5'8" frame made him average by human standards. In the galaxy, he was considered almost comically small. "Captain Foster, Colonel Parker," the Admiral nodded. "I've just received word from the Council. They're requesting human assistance with patrol duties in the border regions." Amy raised an eyebrow. "They want our help. They want to keep us busy," Carl said dryly. "The Council sees this as a way to make us feel useful while keeping us away from any real danger. They're worried their protected species might get hurt." Ben snorted. "Protected species. I'm getting tired of that phrase." "So am I," Carl agreed. "Which is why I'm accepting their requests. It's time we showed the galaxy what humans can really do." 3 days later, Amy found herself commanding a small fleet of human vessels patrolling the edge of Nexari space. The ships were smaller than anything else in the galactic fleet, designed for human crews and human tactics. The flagship was the Destroyer Valiant under Ben's command. "Contact on long-range sensors," reported Lieutenant Dan Clark from the sensor station. 3 ships, definitely Nexari. Amy studied the tactical display. The Nexari patrol was moving through a system that was supposedly under Council protection. "Signal them to withdraw," she ordered. "No response," came the reply. They're ignoring us. Amy wasn't surprised. The Nexari had been testing Council Resolve for months, and they probably saw the small human ships as no threat at all. Captain Parker, she called over the comm system. Are you seeing this? Copy that, Ben's voice. Crackle back. 3 Nexari ships, heading for the mining colony on Kepler 7. Orders? Amy thought quickly. The mining colony had 2,000 civilians, including families with children. If the Nexari attacked, those people would be killed or enslaved. The Council would file a protest and call for negotiations, but that wouldn't help the miners. We intercept, Amy decided. Full speed ahead. Amy. Ben's voice carried a note of concern. We're outnumbered and outgunned. Those are Nexari warships. I know what they are, Amy replied, but they don't know what we are. As the human ships approached, Amy got her first clear look at Nexari vessels. They were massive, built like floating fortresses with heavy armor and powerful weapons. Each one was 3 times the size of her largest ship. Incoming transmission, reported the communications officer. It's from the lead Nexari ship. Put it on screen. The view screen flickered to life, showing a Nexari commander. He was huge, with gray skin like rock and eyes that glowed red in the dim light of his bridge. When he spoke, his voice was deep and threatening. Small ship, you are in Nexari space. Leave now or be destroyed. Amy stood straighter, knowing she looked tiny compared to the alien warrior. This is Captain Amy Foster of the Galactic Council Defense Force. You are in violation of neutral space. Withdraw immediately. The Nexari commander laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Defense Force? You are barely the size of our children. Go home, little human, before you get hurt. This is your final warning, Amy said calmly. Withdraw or face the consequences. The alien's red eyes narrowed. You dare threaten me? I am Commander Vextor of the Nexari 3rd Fleet. I have conquered a dozen worlds and killed thousands of warriors. What can 3 tiny ships do against me? You're about to find out, Amy replied, and cut the transmission. The Nexari ships immediately opened fire, sending massive energy beams toward the human vessels. But Amy had expected this. Evasive maneuvers, she ordered. Pattern Delta 7. The human ships scattered like startled birds, moving in patterns the Nexari had never seen before. Where alien vessels were built for straight-line combat, human ships were designed for speed and agility. They darted between the Nexari shots like fighters avoiding a giant's fist. Return fire, Amy commanded. Target their weapon systems. The human ships attacked in coordinated groups, focusing their smaller weapons on specific points of the Nexari vessels. It was like watching wolves attack a bear, individually weak, but deadly when working together. Direct hit on the lead ship's main gun, reported the tactical officer. Their forward shields are down. Amy smiled grimly. The Nexari had made a crucial mistake. They had underestimated their opponents. Their ships were built to fight other massive vessels in close combat. They weren't designed to deal with fast, coordinated attacks from multiple directions. Ben, take your ship around their starboard side, Amy ordered. I'll hit them from above. Copy that, Ben replied. These guys are slower than I expected. The battle continued for 20 minutes. The Nexari ships were tough, but they couldn't hit targets that moved like the human vessels. Meanwhile, the concentrated fire from the human ships was wearing down their shields and armor. The second Nexari ship is losing power, reported Dan Clark. Their engines are failing. Amy saw her chance. All ships, concentrate fire on them. Lead vessel, let's finish this. The 3 human ships attacked as one, their weapons striking the Nexari flagship's bridge. The massive ship shuddered under the impact, its lights flickering as systems failed. Incoming transmission, the communications officer announced. Put it through. Commander Vextor appeared on screen again, but he looked different now. His red eyes were filled with shock and anger. Behind him, Amy could see smoke and sparks from damaged systems. "This is impossible," he snarled. "You are the smallest species in the galaxy. How can you defeat Nexari warriors?" "Size doesn't matter," Amy replied. "What matters is knowing how to fight." The Nexari commander's face twisted with rage. "This is not over, tiny human. The Empire will remember this insult." "Good," Amy said. "Make sure they remember the name Captain Amy Foster when they do." The transmission cut off, and moments later, the three Nexari ships jumped to hyperspace, retreating from the system. The human ships hung in space, victorious but hardly damaged. "Well," Ben's voice came over the comm, "that was easier than expected. Don't get overconfident," Amy warned. "This was just a patrol. Next time they'll come in greater numbers." "Let them come," Dan Clark said from his station. "We'll be ready." Amy nodded, but she was already thinking ahead. The Nexari would report this defeat to their superiors, and the news would spread through the galaxy. For the first time, the Council's protected species had won a real battle. Word of the victory reached Earth within hours. The reaction was mixed. Some celebrated, others worried about retaliation. But Amy knew they had crossed the line. Humanity was no longer just the galaxy's smallest species. They were warriors. The question was, what would they do with that reputation? As the human ships resumed their patrol, Amy looked out at the stars and wondered what challenges lay ahead. The galaxy was about to learn that being small didn't mean being weak, and the Nexari Empire was about to discover that they had made a very dangerous enemy. Captain Jake Mitchell stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Endeavour, watching the stars blur past the viewport. After 300 years of dreaming about traveling to other worlds, humanity had finally cracked the secret of faster than light. Travel. Jake was chosen to lead the first mission to make contact with alien life, and the weight of that responsibility pressed down on his shoulders. "Captain, we're approaching the coordinates," said Lieutenant Amy Foster from the navigation station. Her voice carried excitement that she tried to hide behind professional calm. Jake nodded and straightened his uniform. Behind him, the rest of the crew worked quietly at their stations. Dr. Peter Walsh, the mission's expert on alien life, checked his translation equipment one more time. Commander Lisa Brooks, the tallest person on the ship at 6 feet, reviewed the diplomatic protocols they had practiced for months. "All stop," Jake ordered. "Let's see what we're dealing with." The main screen flickered to life, showing a massive structure floating in space. It was unlike anything humans had ever built, a city-sized space station with gleaming towers that spiraled up from a central hub. Ships of all shapes and sizes moved around it like insects around a hive. "My God," whispered Dr. Walsh. "It's beautiful." "And huge," added Commander Brooks. "Look at the size of those docking bays." Jake studied the alien vessels moving around the station. Even the smallest ones dwarfed the Endeavour. "Send the standard greeting message," he told the communications officer. "Let them know we come in peace." The response came quickly. A deep voice filled the bridge, speaking in perfect English. "Unknown vessel, you are cleared to dock at Bay 94. Welcome to Nexus Prime, seat of the Galactic Council." As the Endeavour moved toward the designated docking bay, Jake felt a mix of pride and nervousness. They were about to make history, but he couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something much bigger than they understood. The docking bay was enormous. The Endeavour looked like a toy boat next to the other ships already docked. There, Jake and his team walked through the airlock and immediately felt small. The corridor was built for beings much taller than humans, with ceilings that stretched high above their heads. "Stay close," Jake told his team. "Remember, we represent all of humanity today." They were met by a tall, thin alien with blue skin and 4 arms. "Greetings," it said, bowing slightly. "I am Translator Vex 9. The Council is eager to meet your species." As they followed Vex 9 through the station, Jake noticed other aliens stopping to stare at them. Some pointed and whispered to each. Others seemed to muse, as if they had just seen something cute and harmless. Are we the first new species to join the council? Dr. Walsh asked. Oh no, Vex9 replied. The council has 12 member species. You will be the 13th, if accepted. But you are certainly the smallest we have encountered. The way Vex9 said smallest made Jake's jaw tighten. It wasn't just about height. There was something dismissive in the alien's tone. They entered the council chamber, and Jake's heart sank. The room was built like an amphitheater, with 12 massive seats arranged in a circle. Each seat was designed for beings at least 8 feet tall, with the largest being nearly 12 feet high. Please, stand in the center, Vex9 instructed. The council will address you shortly. Jake and his team walked to the middle of the chamber. Looking up at the empty seats, Jake felt like an ant in a stadium. When the council members began to file in, that feeling only got worse. The first to arrive was a massive creature that looked like it was made of living rock. It had to be 10 feet tall and twice as wide as a human. Next came a being with crystalline skin that sparkled in the light, followed by something that looked like a cross between a snake and a dragon. One by one, the 12 species of the Galactic Council took their seats. Jake tried to keep his expression neutral, but inside he was amazed. These beings were incredible, some beautiful, some terrifying, all impressive in their own way. The crystalline being spoke first. I am Ambassador Crickstall of the Kithrin Empire. We have reviewed your species' basic information. You call yourselves humans? That's correct, Jake replied, his voice echoing in the large chamber. I'm Captain Jake Mitchell, representing the United Earth Government. Fascinating, said a being with multiple arms and silver skin. Your species appears to be quite young. How long have you had space travel? We've been in space for about 400 years, Dr. Walsh answered. But we only achieved faster-than-light travel recently. This caused a ripple of what Jake assumed was laughter among the council members. The snake-like being spoke next. 400 years? We Zephyrians have been traveling the stars for over 10,000 years. Yes, they are quite young, agreed another council member. And quite small. Tell me, human, what is your average height? Jake felt heat rise in his cheeks. Adult humans average between 5 and 6 feet in height. The chamber fell silent for a moment. Then, slowly, the council members began to talk among themselves. Jake caught fragments of their conversation, words like tiny, fragile, and cute. Commander Brooks stepped forward. If I may, honored council members, we may be smaller than your species, but we have much to offer. Humans are resourceful, adaptable, and we have a strong sense of justice. I'm sure you do, said the Kithrin ambassador, and Jake could hear the condescension in his voice. But the galaxy can be a dangerous place. There are predator species, pirates, and worse. How could such small beings defend themselves? We've survived on our world for millions of years, Jake said firmly. We faced ice ages, plagues, and wars. We've always found a way to overcome our challenges. The rock-like being spoke in a voice like grinding stone. Your world had no spacefaring threats. The galaxy is different. There are species here that would see you as prey. Which is why, added the silver-skinned being, we are prepared to offer your species protected status. You would be under the Council's protection, of course. Think of it as ... guardianship. Jake felt anger building in his chest. We're not asking to be protected. We're asking to be equals. This caused more discussion among the council members. Finally, the Kithrin ambassador raised one of his long arms for silence. Very well, humans. We will grant your species provisional membership status. You will be allowed to send observers to council meetings and participate in cultural exchanges. What? About voting rights? Commander Brooks asked. Perhaps in time, the ambassador replied. Once you've proven you can survive in the galactic community. For now, consider this probationary period. We will evaluate your species' progress in 1 standard year. Jake wanted to argue, but Dr. Walsh caught his eye and shook his head slightly. They had achieved contact, even if it wasn't the equal partnership they had hoped for. "We accept," Jake said through gritted teeth. "Thank you for this opportunity." "Excellent." The Kithran ambassador stood, towering over them. "Translator Vex 9 will provide you with the necessary documentation. Welcome to the galaxy, little humans." As the council members filed out, Jake heard fragments of their conversations. They were discussing the humans like they were an interesting pet species, harmless, amusing, and completely insignificant. The journey back to the Endeavor was quiet. Once they were back on their ship, Commander Brooks finally spoke. "Well, that could have gone better." "They think we're a joke," Jake said. Bitterly. "Protected status. Guardianship. They see us as children who need to be watched over." Dr. Walsh looked thoughtful. "Maybe that's not entirely bad. Being underestimated can be an advantage." "How?" Jake asked. "If they don't see us as a threat, they won't be prepared when we prove them wrong." Jake looked out at the massive alien station. "You really think we can prove them wrong?" "I know we can," Dr. Walsh said firmly. "They've made the oldest mistake in the book, judging someone by their size instead of their character. That's going to cost them." As the Endeavor began its journey back to Earth, Jake thought about the doctor's words. The aliens had given humanity a chance, even if it wasn't the chance they wanted. Now it was up to humans to show the galaxy what they were really capable of. The stars seemed brighter on the way home. The attack came without warning on a quiet Tuesday morning, Galactic Standard Time. The Harmony's Edge was docked at Nexus Prime, resupplying after another successful musical exchange mission, when every communication channel in the station suddenly went silent. Commander Jake Harrison was in the station's communication center with Lisa Martinez, helping to coordinate the next series of interspecies concerts when the jamming began. Lisa's equipment started showing nothing but static across every frequency. They had been using the broadcast music across the galaxy. "Commander, we've lost everything," Lisa said, her voice tight with worry. "All frequencies are being blocked by some kind of interference pattern. It's stronger than anything I've ever seen." Jake felt a cold fear growing in his stomach. "Can you trace the source?" "It's coming from multiple locations," Lisa replied, her fingers flying over the controls. "This isn't random interference. Someone is deliberately jamming all musical broadcasts across the galaxy." Dr. Ryan Carter rushed into the communication center, his face pale with shock. "Jake, we're getting reports from all over the galaxy. The hegemony of pure logic has declared war on what they're calling the emotional plague. They're jamming every frequency that's been used to transmit music." The hegemony of pure logic was a coalition of species that believed emotions were a mental disease. Led by the machine-like Nexus Collective and supported by hardline factions from dozens of worlds, they had watched the spread of human music with growing alarm. For them, the sight of logical beings crying, laughing, or singing was proof that an infection was destroying galactic civilization. On the cold, metal world of Nexus 1, Supreme Logic Coordinator Binary 77 addressed a gathering of hegemony leaders. Binary 77 was more machine than living being, with a body made of advanced circuits and processing, units that allow for perfect logical thinking without the interference of biological emotions. The contamination has spread to 47 star systems. Binary 77 announced, its mechanical voice echoing through the chamber. Species that once contributed to galactic efficiency through pure logic are now wasting resources on unnecessary emotional displays. The humans have introduced a biological weapon disguised as entertainment. General Thraxon stood at attention among the other hegemony leaders, his massive frame rigid with military discipline. The Chronic commander had allied himself with the hegemony after watching his own soldiers become infected with emotions. "My intelligence reports confirm that entire military units are refusing to follow orders. They claim that music has given them something called conscience that prevents them from engaging in necessary warfare. The solution is clear," Binary 77 declared. "We must eliminate the source of contamination and quarantine all." affected populations until they can be cured of their emotional disabilities. The jamming operation was massive and coordinated. Thousands of ships positioned throughout the galaxy began broadcasting interference signals that blocked all musical transmissions. The hegemony had spent months preparing for this moment, studying human communication patterns and developing technology specifically designed to stop the spread of music. The effects were immediate and devastating. On the planet Zephyria, Captain Vexstar was leading a group of newly emotional Zephyrians in their first attempt at creating original music when the jamming began. Suddenly, the beautiful sounds they had been making were drowned out by harsh static. The Zephyrians, who had just learned to feel joy and wonder, found themselves cut off from the source of these new sensations. "What is happening?" asked Science Officer Krillmuff, his light patterns flickering with confusion and fear. "Why can we no longer hear the harmonic data streams?" "Someone is blocking them," Vexstar replied, her skin glowing with anger for the first time in her life. "Someone wants to take away our ability to feel." The situation was even worse on the Kronat border worlds, where Lieutenant Zorkath and his fellow rebel soldiers had been using music to build a resistance movement against their empire's emotionless military culture. Without the songs that had taught them to feel, many of the young soldiers began to slip back into their old patterns of mindless obedience. "We're losing them," Zorkath reported to his fellow resistance leaders. Without the music to remind them of what they're fighting for, the soldiers are returning to their barracks. The commanders are using the silence to reassert control. But the worst effects were seen on worlds where entire populations had just begun to discover emotions for the first time. On the crystal planet of Veltar, the naturally musical species had been learning to blend their songs with human melodies to create new forms of art. When the jamming cut off their connection to human music, many Veltari fell into deep depression, unable to understand why their newly discovered joy had suddenly disappeared. Emma Rodriguez received the news while she was working on her latest composition in her studio on Earth. The woman who had become the galaxy's most important musical ambassador felt helpless as reports came in from across space describing the effects of the jamming. "How many ships do they have?" she asked Dr. Carter, who had returned to Earth to coordinate the human response to the crisis. "Our intelligence estimates at least 5,000 vessels positioned throughout the galaxy," Ryan replied grimly. "They've been planning this for months. The jamming field is so complete that even our strongest transmissions can't break through." Emma stared at her instruments, the tools that had helped her create bridges between species now rendered useless by the wall of static that surrounded every inhabited world. "There has to be something we can do. We can't let them destroy everything we've built." Commander Harrison had a different kind of problem. The Harmony's Edge had become more than just an exploration vessel. It was now a symbol of the musical revolution that was transforming the galaxy. As news of the jamming spread, beings from dozens of species came to Nexus Prime seeking help, hoping that the humans could find a way to restore their connection to music. "Commander, we have refugee ships arriving from 12 different star systems," reported Lisa Martinez. "They're all asking the same question. Can we break through the jamming?" Jake looked out at the growing fleet of alien vessels surrounding the station. Each ship carried beings who had tasted freedom through music and refused to give it up without a fight. But he knew that conventional communication technology was useless against the hegemony's jamming field. The crisis deepened when the hegemony forces began arresting anyone caught with musical recordings. On worlds under their control, possession of human music became a crime punishable by memory erasure or worse. Beings who had learned to feel were forcibly subjected to emotional suppression treatments designed to return them to their previous state of logical emptiness. Dr. Carter documented the changes as they happened, watching with horror as entire civilizations that had just learned to experience joy, love, and wonder were forced back into mechanical existence. "It's like watching the galaxy die," he told Emma during one of their emergency conferences. These beings had just discovered what it meant to be truly alive, and now they're being forced back into living death. But even as the situation seemed hopeless, pockets of resistance began to form. On hidden bases and remote outposts, groups of aliens worked together to preserve whatever music they could. They copied songs onto primitive storage devices that couldn't be detected by hegemony scanners. They taught melodies to their children so that the music would survive even if all recordings were destroyed. Lieutenant Zorkath led one such resistance cell on a forgotten asteroid in the outer rim of Kronuk space. His group of rebel soldiers had managed to salvage a small collection of human songs before the jamming began, and they guarded these recordings like precious treasures. "We will not let them steal this from us," Zorkath declared to his followers, as they huddled around a small speaker playing a barely audible blues song. "They can block our transmissions, but they cannot silence what lives in our hearts." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as the newly awakened refused to surrender their emotions without a fight. The hegemony had succeeded in cutting off the source of new music, but they could not erase what had already taken root in millions of minds. Emma Rodriguez stared at star charts in her studio, her mind racing as she tried to find a solution. The jamming field was too strong for normal transmissions, but there had to be another way. Music was more than just radio waves. It was a fundamental force of existence that could not be completely contained. As she studied the reports from across the galaxy, Emma began to notice something interesting. The jamming was most effective against artificial transmissions, but it could not completely block natural phenomena. Solar flares, pulsar emissions, and other cosmic events were still creating their own forms of harmonic radiation. "That's it," she whispered, her eyes growing bright with sudden inspiration. "If we can't broadcast through space, maybe we can make space itself broadcast for us." The plan that began to form in Emma's mind was dangerous and would require enormous sacrifice. But as she listened to the reports of suffering beings across the galaxy who had lost their newfound ability to feel, she knew that any risk was worth taking to restore music to the stars.